Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I will be giving you part 2 of my preview and review of Ritual of the Damned, which is the newest rulebook in the Psychic Awakening series. In this book there are new rules for Grey Knights, Dark Angels, and Thousand Suns. Part 1 was all about the Grey Knights and is currently up on the channel already if you want to check that out. And this video will be dedicated to both the Dark Angels and the Thousand Suns. The reason I am putting both together this time in one video is because I've realized it's not really viable for the long term of the Almost Pro Gaming channel to keep making reviews that take 2 weeks to complete because of my normal video making process. With Games Workshop constantly releasing new rulebooks like updated codex and supplements every month, and sometimes multiple books in a single month, if I dedicate that much time to every review and preview video, then I won't have much time to work on any other content besides those reviews and previews and my top 10 army videos. This is the main reason why you've only seen new codex reviews and my top 10 armies videos on the channel for the last couple of months. So I wanted to take a moment to say that I will still be doing preview and review videos, but I don't want them to be the main focus of this channel, even though for the past few months it has really felt like it has. So instead, I'm going to try a new approach to these videos. Instead of my normal process of overanalyzing the new rules, writing a script and rewriting the script, I'm just going to record myself going over some of the new stuff in the new books and giving my basic thoughts on it. I need to stress that this doesn't mean I'm going to take this same approach for all of the videos on my channel. I'm just going to be doing this for preview and review videos, so that way I have more time to dedicate to making my normal content, or at least the content that was normal before I started doing these review and preview videos. For example, like my actual guide videos and commentary videos, and of course the top 10 army videos. So I just wanted to get that out there in case the quality of this video is much lower than previous review and preview videos, so that way you understand why that is. If you feel this new way of producing videos isn't good enough or you don't enjoy it, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section down below, and I'll consider everything you have to say when it comes to making future review and preview videos of new rulebooks. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's now get into what you guys and gals clicked on the video for, and that is the new rules for Dark Angels and Thousand Suns. So starting off with the Dark Angels now have the Angels of Death rule, meaning that they also have And They Shall Know No Fear, Bolter Discipline, Shock Assault, and Combat Doctrines. So they get all the regular doctrines just like vanilla Space Marines do, which include the Devastator Doctrine, Assault Doctrine, and Tactical Doctrine. And also because they have the Angels of Death rule, they can be souped in with other Space Marine chapters that also have the Angels of Death rule, and they'll all be able to benefit from their regular doctrines. As for Datasheets, Master Lazarus is a Primaris character. He's weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 2+, strength 4, toughness 4, wound 6, at 5 attacks, leadership 9, and a 3+ save. He comes with a bolt pistol, a sword that's called Enmity's Edge, and it's strength +2, -4 AP, D3 damage. And it has an ability for when resolving an attack made with this weapon against a Psyker unit, you can reroll the wound roll and reroll the damage roll. He also has an ability called the Spirit Shield Helm, which it looks like it gives a 5+ feel no pain to friendly Dark Angels units when they're within 6 inches of this model. And if they would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, it's +1 to the result, so it would be a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds. He has a 4+ invulnerable save. He rerolls hit rolls of 1s for attacks of Dark Angels units within 6 inches of him. And if he dies in close combat, he can immediately fight as if it were the fight phase before being removed from play. This ability is not cumulative with the Astartes Banner ability or Only in Death Does Duty's End stratagem. So basically he just gets a free Only in Death Does Duty End stratagem. You have an Interrogator Chaplain, which is weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 5, attacks 3, leadership 9, and a save of 3+. He has a bolt pistol, bolt gun, Crozius Arcanum, power fist, frag grenade, and crack grenade. Or I guess he doesn't come with the power fist, but he could be upgraded to have a power fist. He has a 4+ invulnerable save. Dark Angels units within 6 inches of him use his leadership instead of their own. And he subtracts 1 from leadership characteristics of enemy units while they're within 3 inches of him. He also has Angels of Death and Inner Circle. And following suit with the regular Space Marines, he also knows 1 litany from the Litanies of Battle, and he can recite 1 litany. And then we have updated data sheets for a lot of the stuff in the army, like Primaris Chaplain, Master and Phobos Armor. Basically everything is just getting updated to have the Angels of Death keyword to follow in line so that they all have the Angels of Death keyword so they can all make use of combat doctrines and so on. They also now get some of the new stuff like Invictor Tactical Warsuits, Impulsors, Repulsor Executioners, and that's about it for the data sheets. As for their new abilities, they still have the reroll hit rolls of 1 for attack when made with ranged models in a unit as long as it didn't move. So that's still their chapter tactic. But for their chapter doctrine, it is called Relentless Hunt. While the Devastator Doctrine is active, the range characteristic of all heavy and rapid fire weapons equipped on Dark Angels units with this ability is increased by 6 inches, and the range characteristic of all assault and pistol weapons equipped with Dark Angels units with this ability is increased by 3 inches. So essentially, they just shoot farther than most Space Marines, which is pretty good. I find it interesting though that the Devastator Doctrine really only affects heavy weapons, but for Dark Angels with this Super Doctrine, it affects heavy, rapid fire, assault, and pistol weapons. So I think that's the first time we've ever seen that out of a Super Doctrine where it goes outside of like the norm. The increased range on all their weapons means they'll probably outrange most Space Marine armies, which is really good. So for stratagems, they actually get 3 pages of stratagems in this book. So going over them really quickly, they also have Duty Eternal, which is the pick a Dreadnought and it takes half damage for that phase. So that's pretty good. That's the same thing that all Space Marine chapters now have. They also have the Bolt Storm, Rapid Fire, and I forget what the other one's called, but those stratagems that affect intercessors that allow their heavy weapons to snipe out characters, the assault weapons to auto hit, and the rapid fire weapons to gain double the amount of shots. They also have the option for veteran intercessors to upgrade their intercessors to veterans. They have a new stratagem called High Speed Focus. Use this stratagem when a Ravenwing unit from your army is chosen as a target for an attack made with a ranged weapon. Until the start of your next moving phase, models in that unit benefit from the Jink ability even if they didn't advance. So that could be really good on like their Black Knights and stuff like that, because now they don't have to advance in order to get their 4-up invulnerable save. They can now just move normally and don't have to suffer the -1 for advancing and shooting. Now they can just move normally, shoot, and still get their 4-up invul. So that's pretty good. Big Guns Never Tire, which is the stratagem where you can move a vehicle and it can shoot as if it hasn't moved. A new stratagem called Fury of the First. Use this stratagem in any phase. Select 1 Deathwing Terminator unit from your army. Until the end of that phase, when resolving an attack made by a model in that unit, add 1 to the hit roll. So you can make all of your Terminators hit on 2-up. Steady Advance. This is another Space Marine stratagem. It allows you to pick 1 intercessor unit, move it, and count them as if they haven't moved when it comes to the Bolter Discipline ability, so they can get their rapid fire even though they move, if they're not in actual rapid fire range. Hero of the Chapter. This is another Space Marine stratagem, which basically allows you to get another Warlord trait on another character after you give 1 to your normal Warlord. You can only do this once a battle. Stand Firm. This is a new unique stratagem for Dark Angels. You use this stratagem when a Deathwing Terminator unit from your army is chosen as a target of an attack. Until the end of that phase, increase the toughness characteristic of models in that unit by 1. So far we're getting some good things for the Terminators, which I'm liking. I'm just hoping that as I read on, there's more stratagems in here that are going to make them more defensive, kind of like the Grey Knight Paladins, how defensive they can get with all the stratagems and spells and stuff that they got in this book. So hopefully that'll be the same for them, because as of right now, this stuff is still going to help. It definitely buffs up the Deathwing Terminators, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to make them competitively viable yet, but let's keep reading. Full Throttle. Use this stratagem in your movement phase after moving a Ravenwing unit from your army. You can make a second move with that unit this phase. That unit can advance as part of this move if it is not already advanced this phase. This unit cannot shoot or charge this turn. So this can be really good to get in position to move block your enemy, to deny them from charging some stuff or getting on an objective, or being good to get that unit on an objective if you really need to grab that objective, like across the board or something, because Ravenwing units are usually really fast in the first place, so this will get you across the board pretty quickly. Or it could be used to just get them behind cover so they can't be seen by the stronger units in the opponent's army, so you just don't get shot off the table. So that's a pretty good stratagem as well. Ooh, now this is pretty good. Combined Assault. Use this stratagem at the end of the movement phase when you set up a Deathwing unit from your army using the Teleport Strike ability. You can set up that unit wholly within 6 inches of a friendly Ravenwing biker unit that has not advanced this turn, and more than 6 inches away from enemy models. So this kind of reminds me of that one combo that you have with the Banner and Custodes and bringing in a Deep Strike unit within, or just outside 3 inches from the enemy, except this time it's only 6 inches from the enemy. But I believe Deathwing Terminators have a stratagem to be able to shoot when they come in and then still shoot later on in the turn. This could be good to get them in, be able to shoot something behind the screen, and then end up charging the screen after because you're only 6 inches away out of Deep Strike. So that could be really good to getting those Terminators into combat quicker, especially because you're going to be able to fly those bikes up the board pretty quickly. Transhuman Physiology. This is the stratagem where you pick an infantry unit and it can only be wounded on 4-up, despite whatever the enemy unit actually wounds them on. So this is starting to look good for the Deathwing Terminators. And really, I guess the bikes too, like even their Black Knights. It just says when a Dark Angels unit from your army that is not a vehicle or servitor. So I guess you could use it on the bikes too, which is pretty good. Evasive Assault. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Ravenwing biker unit from your army that made a charge move or was charged this turn is chosen as a target for an attack. Till the end of that phase, models in this unit have a 5-up invulnerable save. This would be really good if you got charged by a big unit of something that had Thunderhammers. You could use your transhuman Physiology and this at the same time to just make sure that you really try to keep those bikes alive so that they don't die. Outnumbered but never outmatched. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Deathwing unit from your army is chosen to fight with. Until the end of that phase, add 1 to the attack characteristics of models in that unit if that unit targets an enemy unit containing 10 or more enemy models. So this is really good if you get those Terminators into combat with like a horde or some kind. You can give them the +1 to hit and then give each model an extra attack as well, so you'll be able to hopefully kill that horde or at least do a big enough number to them that their morale will cause an issue for them. Then we have Honored by the Rock, and this just allows a Dark Angel successor chapter to be able to take a normal relic that Dark Angels would be able to take. I guess that says that you can actually have Dark Angel successors now, even though I must have missed that. And that's it for the stratagems, or at least the ones that I read that I kind of like. As for the spells, they have the Obscuration Discipline now, which is the same as the regular Space Marine one. It's the one that like Phobos librarians can learn from. They also have the Vanguard Warlord traits as well, which is stuff that like the Vanguard Phobos units or the Phobos Primaris characters can learn from, like a Phobos captain. Then we have Deathwing and Ravenwing Warlord traits. So for the Deathwing Warlord traits, we have Lay Low the Mighty. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons against character units, or units with a wounds characteristic of 8 or more, by models and friendly Deathwing units whilst their unit is within 6 inches of this Warlord. Inexorable. When resolving an attack made against this Warlord, an unmodified wound roll of 1 to 3 always fails, irrespective of any abilities that the weapon or model making the attack may have. So this is just Indomitable from the Imperial Fist. It just so your Warlord, it makes it harder for them to die against like Thunderhammers or stuff that's going to wound them on 2s or 3s. Watched. Once per battle in your opponent's psychic phase, this Warlord can attempt to resist 1 psychic power in the same manner as a Psyker by taking a Deny the Witch test, even if your Warlord is not within 24 inches of the enemy model manifesting that psychic power. When taking that Deny the Witch test, do not roll the dice. It is automatically passed. Holy crap, that's super good! So if you have this Warlord trait on somebody, he can be anywhere on the board, and you just pick one enemy spell that they cast and you just deny it. That's pretty nuts. So if your opponent has like some super combo where they're relying on one spell to go off, say for example like Grey Knights from this book, where the only way they can change their tide is with a spell, you can just straight up deny that spell every time. So the Grey Knight player better be smart enough to just know to start in the tide that they want instead of like the cover tide or whatever. So yeah, this is really good. That's my favorite part of this book so far, is that one Warlord trait. For the Ravenwing Warlord traits, we have Impeccable Mobility. While they are within 6 inches of this Warlord, models and Ravenwing units from your army do not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons or advancing and firing assault weapons. That's pretty good. So that means, like we were talking about earlier, your Ravenwing Black Knights can now advance, get their Jink for advancing, and they don't have to suffer for advancing and shooting. Tactically Flexible. Once per battle, at the start of the battle round, you can select a combat doctrine that is not currently active. Until the end of that battle round, when resolving an attack made by a model in a friendly Ravenwing unit within 6 inches of this Warlord, you can treat that chosen doctrine as being active instead of the current active doctrine. And then we have Outrider. At the start of the first battle round before the first turn begins, this Warlord and one other Ravenwing unit from your army can move up to 12 as if it were your movement phase. They cannot advance as part of this move. Those units must end their moves more than 9 inches away from enemy models. If both players have units that can move before the first turn begins, the player who is taking the first turn moves their units first. And as for their relics, you have a relic that you can put on a Ravenwing biker that subtracts 1 from enemy invulnerable saves that are within 3 inches of that model. So you can fly that model up to a unit that has a really good invulnerable save that you're trying to kill that turn. Just put them just within 3 inches of that model, and now that enemy model is -1 to their invulnerable saves. Then we have Corvus Oculus, Ravenwing Talonmaster only. Add 6 inches to the range characteristic of ranged weapons a model with this relic is equipped with. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model with this relic, add 1 to the hit roll. So far, I think that's the best one. The Invul one seems pretty good, but it's very situational. This one just seems like it'd be good all the time. Standard of the Unforgiving Hunt. Ravenwing Ancient Model only. Add 1 to the advance rolls and charge rolls made for friendly Ravenwing units if they are within 6 inches of a model with this relic when this roll is made. And then for the Deathwing stuff, they get a Blade of Burden, which replaces a power sword, and it has to go on a Deathwing Master. but it's strength +2, -4 AP, 2 damage. When resolving an attack made with this weapon, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 2 mortal wounds on the target and the attack sequence ends. That could be pretty good, especially for a replacement for a power sword. Pennant of Remembrance, Deathwing Ancient model only. When a friendly Deathwing infantry model within 6 inches of a model with this relic would lose a wound, roll 1d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. It's alright, not that great, to be honest. Key of Atrabale, Deathwing model only. Add 1 to the strength and attack characteristics of a model with this relic. As for their litanies, they know all of the same litanies as regular Space Marines, but they do get one unique one for themselves, and that is Stoic Prosecution. If this litany is inspiring, when a friendly Dark Angels infantry unit that is within 6 inches of this unit and did not advance or fall back this turn is chosen to shoot with, models in that unit can shoot with ranged weapons as if they had remained stationary. So I see this working the best for heavy weapons, not suffering for moving and shooting. Because I think now with Legends, you can't have a chaplain on a bike anymore. I think you can still give them a jump pack, but so I guess this could still kind of work with Ravenwing as well. It could also work with like intercessors and turn them into Ultramarines so that they're getting their super rapid fire all the time because of bolter discipline. And I guess that's about it for the Dark Angels. Overall, to be honest, the reason I didn't give too many thoughts on them is because I don't play Dark Angels and I haven't played against the army in literal years because nobody has really used them for a long time. I think the last time I played against Dark Angels was against Steve at Mini Wargaming back in 2017. So that was an incredibly long time ago. So to be honest, I don't know all that much about them. They're probably in like the top 3 armies that I know the least about. And because of the way that I wanted to do this preview and review video, I didn't give myself enough time to like do research on the army and theorycraft and everything, because I just wanted to get this video out as mainly just a preview video, so that way I can continue working on other content for the channel instead of just doing reviews all the time. So with that said, let's get into the Thousand Suns rules, and then at the end of that, I'll give my overall opinions on everything from this book altogether. Now let's go over the Thousand Suns, which is my favorite Legion in Chaos by far. It used to be Alpha Legion and then slowly turned into Thousand Suns because Magnus is a beautiful model and I love psychic spells. So now Thousand Suns have their own cults, which I guess are like mini chapters in a way, but not really. Like we'll get into that when we get there. They get some new abilities like Hateful Assault, which is something they already had, but it was just in an FAQ. Now it's in an official rulebook, and that's about it. So I guess let's get into that. Let's get into the cults. If your army is Battleforged and includes any Thousand Suns detachments, you can select which cult of the Legion each of those detachments belongs to from the 9 cults listed on pages 79 to 83. If you do, all Thousand Suns units in that detachment, excluding Chaos Cultist units, Zangor units, and named characters such as Ahriman, gain the relevant cult faction keyword. So this means like Magnus, Ahriman, and I think that's really the only 2 named characters Thousand Suns have, but they won't be able to benefit from any of these cults. So each of these cults gives you a psychic power, a warlord trait, and a relic. So this is Future Brady chiming in. Originally I recorded myself going over every new cult and their respective warlord trait, spell, and relic that each cult brings to the table, and I decided to scrap the whole thing. To be honest, I feel like most of the stuff they got is cool and could be fun to use, but not very practical or good for competitive play, and it really showed in my recording. So instead, I'm just going to cover the one cult that I actually really like and can see myself and other ITC players using. The reason being is because this cult in particular is probably the best for a Supreme Command detachment of Thousand Suns characters, which would be used in a Chaos Soup list. So getting into that, yes, I think Thousand Suns are still reserved to being an ally for either demons or regular Chaos Space Marines if you want to go full-on competitive, based off of the rules that I've read out of this book. With that said, the rest of the cults look fun if you're just playing casually with friends and playing your pure Thousand Suns army, but for competitive, there is only one cult that I think looks good, and that cult is the Cult of Magic. Their warlord trait is +1 damage to mortal wound spells. So for example, if you smite an enemy unit for D3 mortal wounds, it's now D3 +1 mortal wounds. And the spell is called Astral Blast, which is a 9-inch range or 15-inch range for a Thousand Suns detachment because of their Legion trait. It's Warp Charge 6 and does D3 mortal wounds to the closest visible enemy unit and 1 mortal wound to all units within 3 inches of that original unit. Combine this with the +1 damage Warlord trait, and that's D3 plus 1 mortal wounds to the original unit and 2 mortal wounds to every unit within 3 inches of that unit. And then the relic for this cult is +1 to cast spells. So I'd put all of this on one Demon Prince and also give him something like Infernal Gateway. That way you can dump out a ton of mortal wounds in a nice little bubble. So this cult is the only cult that I can see that helps with mortal wound potential, which is really the main reason why you bring Thousand Suns characters, is just for spamming spells that do mortal wounds. So I think this cult would be the best for an Ahriman and Friends type list, which personally is the way I think competitive Thousand Suns should still be played, since I feel that's the strongest way to play them. As for the rest of the cults, they'd be helpful to pure Thousand Suns armies, but a lot of their stuff is very situational or not very practical, and again, I can't really read all of them without sounding super disappointed, so I'm just gonna skip them. So with that said, let's move on to the new Thousand Suns stratagems and then get into my final thoughts on this book as a whole. So for the stratagems, Thousand Suns get 1 page of stratagems, and unfortunately there's only a few that I think are practical and usable in a highly competitive environment. The first stratagem is called Magister for 1 CP. This allows you to have a second Warlord and give them a trait. So you can have 1 Demon Prince with High Magister for +1 to cast, and then another Demon Prince using the Warlord trait from Cult of Magic and the Relic from Cult of Magic for +1 to cast and extra mortal wounds. And the second and final stratagem I like for competitive Thousand Suns is called Adepts of Immaterial. This stratagem is 1 command point and you use it when one of your units suffers Perils of the Warp, and that unit no longer suffers Perils of the Warp. As for every other stratagem, there's a nifty combo you can do with a blob of rubrics, but I don't think it's very reliable. There's a stratagem to deploy a unit of rubrics anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from enemy models and more than 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone. Then there's another stratagem to allow a rubric marine unit or a Scarab Occult Terminator to shoot twice if they stay still. So basically you deploy them before the game begins 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone. Then if you get first turn, they don't have to move, they can shoot, which then triggers their bolter discipline. Then you can use the stratagem to shoot them twice, while also using Veterans of the Long War for both of them. So this could actually be an incredibly strong combo if the 1000 player gets to go first. But if they don't go first, then that squad is likely going to die. Unless you take that detachment as the Cult of Duplicity, which I didn't mention earlier. But then you have a character with the Warlord trait from the Cult of Duplicity, which allows you to redeploy D3 units before the game begins. So this could be your get out of jail free card to get your rubrics out of hot water if you lose the roll off for turn 1. Since if you do just leave them there without buffing them with spells and stuff, those rubrics, even if there's 20 of them, are going to die incredibly easy in today's meta. So if you redeploy them, you put them somewhere a little bit more safe, then you could buff them up defensively with spells to try to keep them alive, and even a stratagem to increase their invulnerable save by 1, so then with Weaver of Fate on them, they'll have a 3-up invul. To be honest though, I'm not sold on this combo. Like, it's really good, especially if you go first, but if you go second, I don't really see a use for the Thousand Suns walking up the board after that, because you already spent the command point to deploy them aggressively. But then you had to take a Warlord trait, which most likely you spent another command point to take that Warlord trait because you wanted something like High Magister on somebody else. So now you get to redeploy your rubrics back, so you wasted 2 command points already. Now you have a big blob of rubric marines that are only really 24 inches walking up the board while they can only move, I believe, 5 inches. And I don't know, I'm not sold on it. Like, it sounds cool, but I'm not really that sure about it. But yeah, I guess with that said, that's pretty much it for the stratagems that I like and the cults I like, and I guess that's it. So for some overall thoughts on this book as a whole, I think Grey Knights made it out the best, with Dark Angels being a close second, and I personally think Thousand Suns got the least out of this book, but I could be wrong though. I want to test that rubric blob first, even though I'm not really feeling too strongly about it, but it's at least worth testing. But again, not sold on it. Anyways, overall, I'm way more excited about the Grey Knights than I am about the Thousand Suns though. But I'm going to test both armies out and see how it goes. And as for the Dark Angels, my one buddy that I just mentioned owns the army, and I'm looking forward to coming up with some stuff with him and testing out that army as well. And with that said, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and make sure to subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content like this. Also, let me know down below if this new style of review video was good, bad, or needs a little bit of work. I'd like to have these videos take less time for me in making them, since it opens up more time for me to do other things like working on other videos that aren't just previews or helping coach patrons and stuff like that. Also, thanks to Games Workshop for sending me out a review copy of this book. Thanks to my patrons for being awesome and allowing me to do what I do. And thanks to all of you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Happy wargaming.